My name is Daniel Whitmore, and I was a night shift nurse at St. Vincent's Children's Hospital for nearly 5 years before the incident that made me quit medicine altogether. At 32 years old, I thought I'd seen everything the night shift could throw at me, from drug-seeking parents to code blues that left my scrubs soaked with sweat. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened that rainy November evening. The night I encountered something that defied all medical explanation and left me questioning my sanity. The pediatric ward was my domain from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. I liked the quiet rhythm of night shifts, the way the hospital breathed differently after dark, the muted sounds replacing daytime chaos. My best friend Mark, an ER doctor 2 floors down, always joked, I was a vampire for preferring nights. Normal people have drinks after work, Danny. He'd say during our rare overlapping lunch breaks in the empty cafeteria at 3 a.m. You have breakfast while the rest of the world's waking up. That particular night started like any other. I'd said goodbye to my wife Linda at 10:30 p.m., promising to text when I took my lunch break. Our 2-year-old daughter Lily had been fighting a cold, and Linda was exhausted from a day of chasing after a cranky toddler. Try not to wake us when you get home, she'd murmured sleepily as I left. The memory of her curled up in bed, one hand resting protectively on Lily's back as they shared the big bed, would haunt me in the coming weeks. The drive to the hospital took 20 minutes through quiet suburban streets. I remember the rain started just as I pulled into the staff parking lot. Fat, heavy drops that splattered against my windshield like tiny explosions. My friend and fellow nurse, Jessica, waved at me from under the awning as I sprinted through the downpour. Forgot your umbrella again, Danny, she teased. Jessica had been working the evening shift and was heading home to her own family. The handoff report from the day shift was uneventful. A few post-op patients, one kid with pneumonia on the 4th antibiotics, the usual assortment of asthma and broken bones. Nothing that would require more than routine checks and the occasional dose of pain meds. I settled in at the nurse's station with a large coffee from the vending machine, the bitter brew keeping me company as I reviewed charts. Around 1 a.m., I called Linda to check in. No answer. She and Lily must have been deep asleep. The pediatric floor was quiet, except for the occasional cough or cry from one of the rooms. I did my rounds, checking vitals and adjusting drips, humming softly to a sleeping 4-year-old in room 306, who'd broken his arm falling from a jungle gym. It was 2:17 a.m. when the elevator at the end of the hall dinged. I looked up from the medication cart I was restocking, frowning. Visitor hours had ended at 8 p.m., and we weren't expecting any transfers. The doors slid open with their usual soft whoosh, revealing 2 children standing motionless inside. A boy and girl, neither older than 10. They were dressed strangely, the girl in a frilly blue dress that looked decades out of fashion, the boy in high-waisted jeans and a striped polo that might have been stylish in the 1980s. Both were bone dry, despite the storm raging outside. Can I help you? I called, setting down the vial of antibiotics I'd been holding. They didn't respond at first, just stood there, unnaturally still, their hands limp at their sides. The girl clutched a rag doll with one missing arm. We're here to see our brother, the girl finally said. Her voice was flat, devoid of the usual musicality of children's speech. I walked slowly toward them, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. Visiting hours ended hours ago, kids. Where are your parents? The boy tilted his head slightly. Our mother is parking the car, he said. Each word was carefully measured, like he was reciting lines from a play. She told us to come up first. Something about their stillness unsettled me. Most children fidgeted, glanced around, played with their clothes or hair. These two stood as motionless as mannequins. "What's your brother's name?" I asked, reaching for the visitor log. "Ethan," the girl answered immediately. "He's in room 313. My hand froze halfway to the clipboard. Room 313 was currently unoccupied. Had been for 3 days since we discharged a teenager after his tonsillectomy. The overhead lights flickered briefly. When they steadied, I noticed the children's shoes were spotless. No rain or dirt from outside. "Let me call downstairs to check with security," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. As I turned toward the nurse's station, I heard the girl whisper something to her brother. I couldn't make out the words, but there was an odd, wet quality to the sound, like she was speaking around a mouthful of liquid. The phone rang 7 times before security picked up. "Hey, this is Nurse Whitmore in pediatrics. Do we have any visitors coming up?" 2 children, about 9 or 10 years old. The security guard's response sent a chill through me. "No visitors on the log, Dan. Haven't seen anyone come through the lobby in hours." When I turned back, the children hadn't moved an inch. They stood exactly where I'd left them, their faces expressionless. The elevator doors remained open behind them, the interior lights casting long shadows down the hallway. "Kids, I'm going to need you to come with me to the lobby," I said, keeping my distance. "We'll find your mother together." The girl tilted her head slightly. "But we're already here," she said, "and we're so very cold." It was then I noticed the temperature had dropped significantly in the hallway. My breath fogged slightly in the air as I reached for the emergency call button beneath the nurse's station. The boy took a small step forward. "We just want to see Ethan," he said. "He's expecting us." That's when the heart monitor at the station began beeping erratically, not from any patient room, but from inside the elevator itself. The sound was impossibly loud in the quiet ward, a rapid, uneven rhythm that made my pulse spike in response. I glanced at the monitor screen. The waveform showed ventricular tachycardia, a deadly arrhythmia, but there was no patient connected to the system. The children took another synchronized step forward. The girl's doll slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. Neither child reacted to the dropped toy. "Please," the boy said, his voice taking on an odd, layered quality. "Let us in where it's warm." The emergency lights suddenly flickered on, bathing the hallway in an eerie red glow. In that moment, I finally saw their eyes clearly, for the first time. Where there should have been whites and irises were only smooth, endless black orbs that reflected no light. The elevator doors began closing on their own then, moving jerkily, as if fighting against some unseen force. The children didn't turn as the doors squeezed shut behind them. They simply stood there, watching me with those terrible, empty eyes, until the last sliver of light disappeared. When the doors sealed completely, the heart monitor flatlined with one final, drawn-out tone, then silence. I stood frozen for what felt like an hour before finally moving. My hands shook as I picked up the discarded doll from the floor. The fabric was ice cold and slightly damp, like it had been left outside in the rain. One of the button eyes came loose in my fingers, revealing a dark, hollow space inside the doll's head. It wasn't until my shift ended that I checked the hospital records properly. Room 313 hadn't always been empty. 15 years ago, it had housed a young boy named Ethan Miller, a leukemia patient who had died during a particularly bad storm. The night he passed, his 2 younger siblings had been in a car accident on their way to visit him. They never made it to the hospital alive. The security footage from that night showed nothing unusual, just me standing alone in the hallway, talking to empty air before suddenly recoiling in fear. But every night since then, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the elevator on the pediatric floor dings. And sometimes, if you listen very closely, you can hear the faint sound of children whispering from behind the sealed doors. They're still looking for their brother. And they're still so very cold. My name is Matt Reynolds. I'm 30 years old, and up until 3 weeks ago, I would have told you I was just an ordinary guy living an ordinary life. I work as a mechanic at Hanson's Garage over on 5th Street, the kind of place where the coffee's always burnt and the radio's always playing classic rock too loud. My sister Amy says I spend more time with engines than people, and she's not wrong. After Dad left and Mom passed, those greasy old cars became easier to understand than most folks. I live alone in my grandparents' old house, a 2-story colonial with creaky pipes and hardwood floors that groan like they're in pain. The place is too big for one person, but I could never bring myself to sell it. Too many memories in these walls, good ones mostly, like Grandpa teaching me how to change oil in the garage, or Grandma sneaking me cookies when Mom wasn't looking. My only roommate these days is Max, a golden retriever I rescued 5 years ago after someone abandoned him at the garage. Best damn decision I ever made. He's lying at my feet right now as I write this, his head resting on my boot like he's afraid I'll disappear if he lets go. He hasn't been the same since that first night. Neither have I. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. I remember because Tuesdays are when Amy usually brings Emma over for dinner. My niece just turned 6 last month, all missing teeth and endless questions about how engines work. That particular Tuesday, they canceled because Emma had a cold. I'd spent the evening alone in the garage, working on my pet project, a '78 Camaro I'd been restoring for the past year. The radio was playing some Springsteen song when my phone buzzed on the workbench. Unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but with Mom's recent heart attack still fresh in my mind, I'd been jumpy about missing important calls. Hello? At first, there was just static. Then this wet, gurgling sound, like someone trying to talk with a mouthful of water. My fingers tightened around the wrench I'd been using. Matt. The voice wasn't right. It was too high and too low at the same time. Like two people speaking in unison. You forgot to lock the back door. A chill ran down my spine. I had checked the door before coming out to the garage. I always did. Ever since those break-ins started in the neighborhood last summer, I'd been religious about checking the locks. Max, who'd been sleeping in his usual spot by the tool chest, suddenly stood up, his ears flattening against his skull. A low growl started in his chest, the kind he usually reserved for the mailmen or stray cats. "This isn't funny," I said, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. "Dave, if this is your idea of a joke." The static on the line surged, and in it, I heard something that made my blood freeze. The distinct squeak of the third step from the top of my staircase. That step always creaked in that exact way. I'd been meaning to fix it for months. Max's growls turned to frantic barking as he backed toward me, his tail tucked between his legs. That's when the banging started. 3 sharp knocks from inside the house. Not at the front door, not at the garage entrance, somewhere deeper inside. Maybe the kitchen, maybe right at the base of the stairs. I grabbed the baseball bat I keep under the workbench, the one I used for Sunday softball games with the guys from the garage. The metal felt slick in my sweaty palm as I crept toward the door connecting the garage to the house. The kitchen was dark when I pushed the door open. Too dark. I always leave the light above the stove on, always. Hello? My voice sounded small in the empty house. No answer, just the faintest creak from upstairs, the master bedroom, where my grandfather had died 15 years ago. Max refused to go further than the kitchen threshold, whining like he'd been kicked. That's when my phone rang again. Same unknown number. The screen cast a sickly blue glow on the walls as I answered. "Stop this," I hissed. The voice sighed, a disturbingly human sound. "You always were stubborn, Maddie." My breath caught in my throat. Only one person ever called me that. My mom. Before the cancer took her voice. Before the morphine made her forget my name. "But I'm already inside," the voice continued. Now from two places at once, through the phone and from the top of the stairs. I ran, didn't grab my keys, didn't lock the door, just sprinted until my lungs burned and my vision spotted. The 24-hour diner 3 blocks away had never looked so beautiful, its fluorescent lights buzzing like angels' harps. Officer Petrelli found me there an hour later, still shaking. My grease-stained shirt drawing stares from the graveyard shift workers. He'd been the one to respond when old Mrs. Henderson reported a prowler last month. Another prank call? He flipped his notepad open with a weary air of someone humoring a drunk. I showed him my call log. 17 unanswered calls from unknown since I'd fled. His eyebrow twitched. "We'll check it out." They found nothing. Of course. No broken windows, no footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just Max cowering in the bathtub, his claws having torn grooves in the porcelain. The back door was locked. Had always been locked, according to Petrelli's flashlight beam. But they didn't hear what happened when they left. How my landline rang the second their taillights disappeared. How the voice whispered, "Cops never believe until the second body drops," before the line went dead with a click that echoed from my bedroom closet. And they definitely didn't see what I saw when I finally gathered the courage to open that closet door. Where my old high school jacket hung, the one Mom had stitched my name into after I kept losing it. The stitching now read Matt in perfect thread, except the second T was unraveling, as if someone had picked at it recently. The calls got worse after that, always when I was most vulnerable, half asleep in bed, showering with my eyes closed, mid-sentence while arguing with Amy about my paranoia. The voice knew things, private things, like how I still kept Dad's old Zippo in my sock drawer, even though I quit smoking years ago. How I'd stolen $20 from Amy's piggy bank when I was 9 and never confessed. Then came the night at Amy's. Her daughter Emma's 6th birthday party had been chaos, screaming kids, melted ice cream, the whole deal. I was crashing on her couch when my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I rejected it. It rang again instantly, and again. On the 12th call, Emma, who'd crept downstairs for water, picked it up before I could stop her. Her little face crumpled. "Uncle Matt? The man says he's in my dollhouse." The dollhouse in question, a 3-foot-tall Victorian replica, sat in the corner. Its tiny front door swung open as we watched. Inside, the plastic family figures lay in pieces, heads separated from bodies, except for the little girl doll. It stood upright, facing us. Someone had used red marker to draw tears streaking down its face. That's when I noticed Emma's pajamas, the same pink polka dots as the doll's dress. We tore that dollhouse apart, found nothing, no wires, no hidden devices. But later, while Emma slept between us in the master bed, my phone buzzed with a text from my own number. She looked pretty, in a casket too. Attached was a photo taken through Emma's bedroom window from outside. I'm writing this from a motel 200 miles away. Max is asleep at my feet. The room's phone just rang. When I picked up, all I heard was the sound of my own voice whispering, "You can't outrun what's already inside you, Maddie." Then the bathroom door, which I deadbolted, creaked open behind me. The calls keep coming, from different numbers now, always when I'm alone, always when the shadows grow long. And last night, when I made the mistake of answering, the voice didn't speak at all. It just played a sound, the distinct squeak of my motel room's closet door opening, right before I heard that same squeak in real life. My name is Ryan Carter, an accountant living alone in my Seattle apartment. Since my girlfriend Lisa moved out 6 months ago, she said I'd become emotionally unavailable since inheriting my grandmother's antique collection. Last Saturday, I found the painting at a cluttered estate sale. A Victorian girl holding a slightly cracked porcelain doll, her expression strangely lifelike. The elderly attendant chuckled when I bought it. "That one's been waiting for you," she said, wrapping it in yellowed newspaper. I hung it above my reading chair, admiring how the lamplight caught the girl's lace collar. My best friend Jake video called that evening to discuss our hiking trip. "Nice painting," he commented when it appeared behind me. "Looks almost real." Over coffee the next morning, Jake admitted, "That doll's eyes followed me during our call." We laughed it off, though I noticed the painting's frame felt unusually cold when I touched it later. The week passed normally. I worked late at the firm, went to the gym, and occasionally texted Lisa about her new job in Portland. The painting just existed in my living room, though I sometimes caught myself staring at it longer than intended. On Thursday, Jake called again. "Dude, I swear that doll moved," he said, squinting at his screen. Its head was tilted left yesterday. Now it's straight. I turned to look and felt my stomach drop. He was right. That night, I woke to the sound of faint giggling. My apartment was empty, but the painting now hung crooked, the girl's smile slightly wider. When I straightened it, the frame burned my fingers with icy cold. I called Lisa for the first time in weeks. Before I could speak, she asked, "Why do I keep dreaming about a little girl with a broken doll?" My blood ran cold as she described the painting perfectly, down to the chip in the doll's left hand. The next morning, I found dark streaks beneath the painting, like something had dripped from the doll's cracked face. They smelled like wet earth and something metallic. Jake insisted it was just aging varnish when I showed him. That night, the horror truly began. I awoke at 3 a.m. to find the painting in my hallway. The doll's crack had widened, oozing thick black fluid that dripped onto my carpet. When I reached to wipe it, the substance clung to my fingers like tar. The dripping continued for days. I'd clean it, only to find fresh streaks each morning. Then came the nightmares, visions of the girl, stepping out of the frame, her doll whispering my name in a voice that wasn't human. Jake came over after I missed work. He froze when he saw the painting. "Ryan, the doll's gone," he whispered. Indeed, the girl's arms were now empty. We found the porcelain doll in my bedroom, its face split completely in half. When I researched about that painting, research revealed the painting's history. Created in 1889 after a child's suspicious death. Newspaper archives showed 3 previous owners died in their sleep, their faces frozen in terror. The last owner's journal mentioned the girl walks at night. The manifestations escalated. The painting moved nightly, appearing in different rooms. The doll reappeared in increasingly disturbing places, once in my refrigerator, another time in my shower, always leaking that foul black liquid. Lisa called in hysterics. "She's in my apartment," she screamed. I heard giggling in the background before the line went dead. I drove all night to Portland, finding Lisa unharmed but traumatized. "She wants us together again," Lisa whispered. An antique dealer recognized the painting's description. "You need the original frame," he said, directing me to an abandoned chapel where the artist once worked. "Burn it there at midnight." The chapel's rotting doors creaked open to reveal an ornate frame on the altar, carved with strange symbols. As I placed the painting inside, the temperature plummeted. The doll materialized at my feet, its head rotating backward with a sickening crack. Shadows stretched from the painting as I poured lighter fluid. The girl's face contorted in rage as flames erupted blue. The doll exploded, spraying black sludge that burned my arms. The chapel filled with screaming before silence fell. I woke in a hospital. Lisa sat beside me, gripping my hand. "It's over," she said. "The doctors found me unconscious outside the chapel, the frame clutched in my arms completely empty." Back home, my apartment felt different. The walls no longer creaked at night. The air smelled of lemon cleaner instead of damp earth. But faint stains remained, where the painting had hung stains that wouldn't scrub away. Lisa stayed for 2 weeks, just to be safe. We didn't discuss the painting, but I noticed she'd removed all mirrors from her apartment before coming. We're talking about adopting a dog, something big and loud to fill the silence. Lisa thinks a golden retriever would help us both sleep better. I don't disagree. Life continues. Work, groceries, occasional drinks with Jake. The ordinary feels extraordinary now that the nightmares have stopped.